Good evening, all. Myself, Dr. Pradeep Ingle. I am practicing as a consultant gynecologist in Snehadeep Super Speciality Gynae Care, Ahmednagar, Maharashtra. As India is badly hit by COVID 19, we happen to be in a second wave. We are getting lot of pregnant patients with COVID 19. Now, this is an attempt to give evidence based guidelines regarding management of COVID 19 during delivery. So, this is how our lecture will go. What are we going to address? So we are going to address how the screening is to be applied and how testing is to be applied in this patient who are visiting our into our labor room. We are going to address infection control interventions in COVID-19 labor wards. We are going to address what is the timing of delivery in COVID-19 infected pregnant woman. We are going to discuss is there any change in route of delivery for all such cases. We are going to discuss analgesia and anesthesia considerations during COVID-19 deliveries. We are going to address a few issues regarding water birth, delivery considerations, and how to monitor maternal fetal well-being. We are going to discuss venous thromboembolism prophylaxis. We are going to discuss postpartum care and neonatal evaluation. And in the end, what are the contraceptive advices we are going to give to all such women? So to begin with, how a testing is to be carried out. Now, it is recommended when the infection is prevalent, you should test each and every woman who is visiting to a labor ward. So this is called as universal screening. Now, as we all know, India is badly hit by COVID-19 second wave. So almost in normal population, the incidence has crossed to more than 10%. So in all such cases, it is recommended that each and every woman who is visiting to your labor ward should be screened for COVID-19. Now, symptom-based screening is offered to all. Means you should ask each and every expectant mother who is visiting to your labor ward about signs and symptoms of COVID-19. Like if he is having cough, cold, coryza, fever, body ache, then diarrhea, loss of smell, loss of taste. Now, these are the likely symptoms of COVID-19. In all such cases, or in each and every expectant mother who is visiting to your labor ward, you should offer her screening test. Now, what screening test is to be applied? In emergency wards, you should apply a rapid antigen test in which the results are available within 15 to 30 minutes. And in all cases where you are going to have a scheduled admission, you should do this test at least 72 hours prior. Now, in all such cases, it is recommended RT-PCR test is to be done, and this test is having high sensitivity than RA test. So, in nutshell, universal screening is to be applied. In emergency situations, RA test is to be done, and in scheduled admissions, like if you want to have a labor induction 3 days after, or if you want to have a cesarean section 3 days after, within 72 hours you should do a more sensitive test that is called as RT-PCR test. Now these are the guidelines by CDC. Now what are the infection control interventions? Means if you happen to deliver a COVID-19 woman in your setup, now what are the infection control interventions you should be following? Now all patients and any exempted visitor should be given surgical mask to wear. So this is for the prevention of COVID-19 infection from the source. So patients and visitors, they should all be given surgical masks as it is known to prevent COVID-19 spread into the hospital environment. Now, provide care for a pregnant patients with COVID-19 in a well-ventilated single occupancy room with a closed door and dedicated bathroom. So it is again to have a mixing of infection, and ideally such room should be negatively pressurized. Healthcare workers should use contact and droplet precautions, that is, gown, gloves, mask, face shield, or goggles. So, this is how a healthcare worker should look like. A gown should be non-porous. A gown should it should not soak. It should not allow water to percolate. Gloves should be changed in between patients. Mask, preferably N95 mask or a surgical mask, especially if you are catering to COVID-19 pregnant wards, you should preferably wear N95 masks. Face shield or goggles, they can be repeatedly used. single PPE kit can be used in your duty. There is no need to change PPE kit for each and every patient. Now, what about timing of delivery? Especially in non-severe illness, means the patient is stable, her saturation is not falling. What are the guidelines? If your patient is either asymptomatic, means she is incidentally detected, or if she is having mild symptoms like cough, coryza, then body ache, fever, but in absence of desaturation. If the mother is more than 39 weeks of gestation, in all such women, delivery can be considered. It will decrease the risk of worsening maternal status before the onset of spontaneous labor. So it is known that if a mother worsens, she usually worsens after in second week of her infection. So if in all such women, if she has crossed more than 39 weeks, it is always better to deliver her. For most patients who are less than 39 weeks, delivery is not indicated if the patient is stable. Patient is stable means in mildly symptomatic cases or asymptomatic cases who are less than 39 weeks, you should not intervene or you should not induce labor. Now, what is the timing of delivery in severe illness? Now, in severe illness, timing of delivery is individualized. Means for each and every patient, different plan has to be there, and the decision is to be made by multidisciplinary team. Now, if a patient is having severe disease but who is not intubated, means the patient is desaturating but who is not intubated, consideration of delivery in pregnancies more than 32 to 34 weeks in a setting of worsening status is advocated. The rationale is that delivery is performed before the pulmonary situation worsens and ongoing maternal hypoxia places the fetus as a risk of compromise. So, in most authorities, they do not advocate delivery prior to 32 weeks. So, maternal situation may worsen in second week given the known morbidity and mortality of very preterm infants. Means in nutshell, if the patient is having severe illness but who is not intubated, you should consider a delivery if she is more than 32 to 34 weeks and if she is desaturating. But even if patient is less than 32 weeks, the decision is to be individualized by a multidisciplinary team. Now, if we go ahead and see a patient who is severely ill and is intubated, means who is desaturating and is intubated, what are the guidelines about delivery? So, after 32 to 34 weeks, in all intubated patients, some authorities have advocated delivery, but others consider delivery only in patients with refractory hypoxemic respiratory failure or worsening critical illness. So, between viability and 32 to 32 weeks pregnancy, usually iatrogenic preterm birth is avoided. So, in nutshell, in severe illness, patients in whom who are intubated, who are bad, the decision is to be again decided by multidisciplinary team. There are two approaches. Few are aggressive in their approach. Say, in all intubated patients after 32 to 34 weeks, you should deliver them. But other consider delivery only in cases of worsening patients. Now, what are the considerations about choosing the route of delivery? In patients with asymptomatic or non-severe infections, as we all know, COVID-19 is not an indication to alter the planned route of delivery. Means you have decided to give a vaginal trial of labor, you should not alter it for the sake of COVID-19. Cesarean delivery does not reduce the already low risk of neonatal infection. So as we all know, especially in the illnesses like HIV, where cesarean delivery is preferred so as to decrease the perinatal transmission. But in COVID-19, it is not, cesarean section is not known to reduce perinatal risk of infection. Even if you deliver a neonate vaginally, the chance of perinatal transmission is less than 5%. So in all symptomatic patients, you should not alter your route of delivery. If you have decided to give them a vaginal trial, you can always give. Now, patients with severe or critical illness, now the decision is a bit dicey. In some cases, where the mother is decompensating, you may choose an induction of labor, but usually in bad patients, logistically induction of labor is impractical. In all such cases, cesarean delivery is often performed because it is quick. Now, what are the considerations regarding labor analgesia and anesthesia? Neuraxial anesthetic is not contraindication in patients with known or suspected COVID-19. Means if expectant mother is wanting to have a labor analgesia, you can always give neuraxial anesthesia in the form of epidural block, or if you want to do a cesarean section, spinal anesthesia can also be safely given. As epidural anesthesia as well as spinal anesthesia, both are considered to be safe in COVID-19 pregnant woman. So it is not known whether use of Internox is aerosol generating procedure or not. Means in some, especially in European countries, mixture of nitrous oxide and oxygen is used as a labor analgesia, but it is not known whether it increases the risk of healthcare workers. Now, few of the organizations they have said that you should use viral filters to prevent aerosols from generation. Now, what about proning? We all see usually in adult patients who are desaturating, proning does have a definite role, but should we do it in pregnant women? So, proning is not advisable in pregnancy. Generally, left lateral tilt can be given to improve saturation. So, proning is not advisable. You should prefer left lateral tilt. Now, what about water birth? Water birth is usually popular in European countries. Now, in symptomatic COVID-19 cases, you should not allow labor in you should not allow birth in water for two reasons. One is chance of fecal contamination is there, as we all know. SARS-CoV-2 virus is usually it can be excreted through the fecal matter, and it can increase the risk of perinatal transmission, as well as integrity of PP is compromised in water birth. So, healthcare worker they are exposed to COVID-19 SARS-CoV-2 virus. So, in symptomatic patients, you should not allow such water birthing. But in asymptomatic patients, there is inadequate evidence of risk of virus transmission in water. So, it is better to avoid water birth in COVID-19 pandemic. So what about use of magnesium sulfate in patients with respiratory compromise? As we all know, magnesium sulfate is given for two purposes. One is seizure prophylaxis and the other one is neonatal neuroprotection. But if you happen to treat COVID-19 mother who is having either seizure or whom we are giving magnesium sulfate for neuroprotection, you should always monitor magnesium levels. You should see whether the respiratory rate is appropriate or not, and you should monitor her oxygen saturation in with pulse oximetry. The ideal magnesium level should be in between 10 to 13 milliequivalent per liter. As we all know, in bad patients with COVID-19, usually patients go in multi-organ failure, and patients may have acute renal injury, and they may have impaired renal parameters. So in all such cases, dose adjusting is recommended rather than withholding the drug, because magnesium sulfate is a light-saving drug. We should not withhold it. So in intubated patients, use of magnesium sulfate is a bit risky if you don't happen to monitor respiratory rate, or if you don't happen to monitor blood levels of magnesium. Arrhythmias or arrest can be the first sign of serious toxicity. So in all such cases, what is recommended is three things. First is monitor magnesium levels. They should be in between 10 to 13. You should monitor respiratory rate if the patient is conscious and awake, and you should monitor pulse oximetrical oxygen levels in her blood. So what about fetus? How we should monitor fetus? Now, American College it advises continuous electronic fetal monitoring for all pregnant women who are having either suspected or confirmed COVID-19. American College is a bit aggressive, as they said कि बाबा there is always high chance of abnormal fetal heart rate tracings in all women with COVID-19. But Royal College is a bit conservative. It suggests that in asymptomatic women, continuous EKG is not required or not recommended. But definitely in symptomatic women, continuous electronic fetal monitoring is recommended. Now, Bluetooth enabled CTG equipment is always preferable, especially in patients who are unstable, who are having severe illness, those who are intubated, Bluetooth enabled CTG machines can give us continuous tracings of fetal heart rate, and fetal heart rate abnormalities may be an early indicator of worsening of maternal status. In all stable patients, you should do non-stress test, NST test, either once or twice in a day. Now, what about asymptomatic and mildly symptomatic women? Maternal and fetal monitoring procedures are generally routine with addition of hourly oxygen saturation. Means you should monitor pulse, blood pressure hourly. You should monitor fetal heart rate every 15 minutes in a woman who is laboring in first stage of labor, and every 5 minutely in a woman who is laboring in second stage of labor. For severely ill patients, continuous monitoring of vital parameters is recommended. Now you can do ARM, you can do internal fetal heart rate monitoring as per usual indications. But it should be noted that labor and particularly pushing often causes loss of feces, which can contain the virus and which can increase the risk of perinatal transmission. So you should avoid or minimize the soiling. Now what about delivery considerations? Now delayed umbilical cord clamping is usually advised. There is theoretical concern of if we delay umbilical cord clamping, it may transmit the virus, but blood sprays has not yet been established. So routine practice of delayed umbilical cord clamping should continue. Skin to skin contact between mother and newborn in the delivery room can be promoted provided mother is using mask. Umbilical cord blood banking can be performed if planned. The risk of COVID-19 transmission by blood products has not been documented and is unclear at present. Means those couples who want to have a cord blood banking, they can usually opt for it, as COVID-19 transmission by blood product has not yet been documented. The management of third stage of labor is not affected by COVID-19. The only exception is you should preferably avoid tranexamic acid for the fear of increased risk of thrombosis. And second consideration is you should avoid methyl ergometrin, as rare cases of respiratory failure as well as severe vasoconstriction in severely ill patients have been reported. In patients who develop intrapartum fever, COVID-19 infection should be part of their differential diagnosis. Now what about venous thromboembolism prophylaxis? All pregnant women admitted with confirmed or suspected COVID-19 should be offered prophylactic low molecular weight heparin unless the birth is expected within 12 hours. This is a recommendation by Royal College. Thromboprophylaxis is to be continued for 10 days following hospital discharge. Now, longer duration of thromboprophylaxis is considered for women with persistent morbidity. But American College is a bit selective in thromboprophylaxis. It says thromboprophylaxis is to be given only in high-risk cases. It should not be given to all. But Royal College is a bit aggressive. It suggests each and every patient who is admitted, who is having COVID-19 with pregnancy, should be given low molecular weight heparin. Now the dose is usually 0.8 to 1 milligram per kg. It is to be administered subcutaneously in OD dosing. Till the time we don't anticipate delivery, the dosing is to be continued. Now, what are the antibiotics which can safely be given if we have a superadded bacterial infection? Now, they are commenced if the WBC count is raised, which is an indicator of superadded bacterial infection. Now, you can safely prescribe macrolide antibiotics, cephalosporins, oxazolidinones like linezolid, carbapenem like imipenem, and cilastatin. Now, what about postpartum care? Now, you should monitor mother for vital signs every 4 hourly for first 24 hours after vaginal delivery and for 48 hours after cesarean delivery. In patients with moderate illness, you should perform continuous pulse oximetry monitoring for first 24 hours until there is improvement in signs and symptoms. Now, type and frequency of follow-up laboratory studies and chest imaging, initial or repeat, are guided by patient scores. Means some physicians, they do advise CRP testing, D-dimer testing, ferritin testing, repeat high resolution CT chest. It is to be guided by patient's course, and generally blood investigations are repeated every 48 to 72 hours. If whether to repeat CT or not, it depends the discretion of intensivist. Now, what about newborn evaluation and care? Now, you should test for COVID-19 SARS-CoV-2 virus, especially within 24, test at approximately 24 hours of age. And if this test comes out to be negative, again this test is to be repeated at 48 hours of age. Since some infants they do have had a negative test at 24 hours only to have positive test later time. So if a healthy asymptomatic newborn will be discharged prior to 48 hours, a single test at 24 to 48 hours age, 24 to 48 hours of age can be performed. So in nutshell, in a low resource countries like India, either you can do two tests or a single test at 24 to 48 hours. Usually what is recommended is, if you want to do a single test, it is better to do a test at 48 hours. At least 10 to 20% of the fetuses who are negative at first test, they become positive on second test. So we don't recommend separating mother and newborn after birth. So it is seen in multiple studies that if you keep mother and baby in a same room with at least 6 feet distance, it does not increase the chance of perinatal transmission. So it is always better to keep them both in a same room. So mother should wear a mask and practice hand hygiene during contact with their infants and at other times. Reasonable physical distancing between mother and neonate or placing the neonate in an incubator is desirable when feasible. So when we label the patient to be non-infective, and when should we discharge such patient from isolation? The patient should end her isolation when all of the following are present. First is 10 days have passed from the onset of symptoms in symptomatic patients, or 10 days have passed from the diagnosis in asymptomatic patients. Second is 20 days have passed from diagnosis of illness or onset of symptoms in critically ill patients. Third is no fresh complaints in last 72 hours and there is improvement in previous symptomatology. And there is no history of fever in last 24 hours. So in all such cases, we consider these patients as non-infective and we can discharge them from isolation and allow them to mix in general population. Now what about contraceptive choices? Now American College it advises tubal sterilization. It does not add into additional time or risk when performed at an uncomplicated caesarean birth. Thus, tubectomy operations can be performed if planned. Now in India we do have its stringent guidelines which are called as medical eligibility criteria or ACDS criteria described by who? ACDS is accept, caution, delay and special cases. Now in all such cases, if the patient is clinically stable, you can accept a patient for tubal ligation, but if patient is unstable, you should definitely delay it. Now postpartum long-acting contraceptive like copper T or DMPA can usually be prescribed in all such cases. So to summarize, information about COVID-19 is evolving rapidly and interim guidance by multiple organizations is constantly being updated and expanded. This is our attempt to give evidence-based guidance regarding delivery in COVID-19. This is attempt to give guidance, but final treatment options should be finalized by multidisciplinary team involving physicians, gynecologists, intensivists, and pediatricians, considering informed decision making. And let's hope for this day to arise soon. Mask and COVID-free society. Thank you very much. Hope this lecture would help in management of COVID-19 laboring women, and it would be of great help to a gynecologist who are doing the noble job of serving such compromised women. Thank you very much.